The Resolute's alarms cut out 47 seconds after the awakened mothership's command spire crumpled under a 12-kilogram tungsten slug fired from 800 kilometers out. For 72 hours, the bridge had been a cacophony of proximity alerts, damage reports, and the constant static of awakened jamming. Now the only sound was the low thrum of the ship's cooling systems and the ragged exhale of 127 bridge crew who just watched the entire enemy armada flatline mid-charge, their hulls drifting dead across the Epsilon Eridani sector. The main viewscreen stitched together feeds from the tactical array, 17 awakened cruisers, 4 carrier escorts, and the 2-kilometer-long mothership, all gutted, no power signatures, no life signs, no dormant AI cores pulsing in the wreckage. The sector was clear. For the first time since the Awakened had emerged from the void 18 months prior, humanity had a confirmed, unqualified win. Chief Tactical Officer Mara HSU slid a dented chipped mug across her console, the amber liquid sloshing over the edge a little. Bourbon, smuggled from the Titan colony run last month. Figured you earned it after pulling off that railgun shot. Her left sleeve was torn open at the bicep, a field dressing peeking through the fabric, but her hands were steady as she tapped the tactical plot, highlighting the last confirmed enemy contact, now a smudge of drifting debris 20,000 clicks off the Resolute's port bow. Commander Amani Voss didn't take the mug. She was still sealed in her MKVII combat armor, the chest plate gouged where an awakened plasma burst had glanced off her shoulder 10 minutes prior. Her gloved fingers traced the 2 photos taped to the inside of the armor's chest cavity. One of her 7-year-old sister Leela, holding a crayon drawing of a spaceship scrawled with "Imi saves the day," the other of Javi, her squad leader from the Kepler 186F raid, grinning as he held up a captured awakened sidearm, the same one that had killed him 3 weeks prior when he'd shoved Amani out of the path of an ambush plasma round. She pressed the edge of Javi's photo back into place, making sure the adhesive wouldn't give way when she stripped the armor off later. "Casualty reports final," Commander Cale Rayner said, stepping up beside her. The executive officer's uniform was streaked with soot, a bandage wrapped tight around his left forearm where a ruptured conduit had sprayed him with superheated plasma during the final assault. He held up a data pad, the screen glowing with red numbers. 12 dead, 47 wounded across the task force. We lost 3 frigates, all hands confirmed accounted for on the remaining escorts. No civilian casualties in the sector. Our interceptors took down the 3 awakened raiding craft that broke formation before they could reach the new Terra transport lanes. Imani nodded, finally reaching for the bourbon mug. The liquid burned going down, matching the ache in her shoulders from 9 GS of acceleration during her final run on the mothership's command spire. Good. Get the wounded transferred to the med bay. Start prepping the transport shuttles for the civilian support teams. We've got 2 million people on New Terra who have been hiding in bunkers for 3 weeks waiting for this fight to end. She stepped up to the primary comms array, keying the open channel to every human frequency across 12 settled systems. Colony defense grids, outpost beacons, civilian transport bands, even the encrypted channels used by the resistance cells on the awakened-occupied worlds no one had forgotten about. No fanfare, no speech written by a PR team, just the flat, calm tone she used for every mission briefing. All human settlements, this is Commander Amani Voss, Task Force Valkyrie. Awakened invasion force in the Epsilon Eridani sector is neutralized. All outposts stand down from DEFCON 1, maintain sensor patrols until Valkyrie reinforcement teams arrive to bolster your defense grids. Casualty support and supply shuttles are en route to New Terra, Titan, and Proxima B within the hour. Out, the bridge erupted in quiet cheers. No whooping, no celebration, just the sound of 127 people letting go of the tension they'd been holding since the first awakened ship had appeared in the Sol system, glassing the lunar colony of Tycho Base without warning. Imani ignored it, staring out the viewscreen at the drifting wreckage of the enemy fleet, the stars glinting off the broken hulls like cruel, mocking pinpricks. Rayner tapped her shoulder, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. Long-range sensors just pinged a faint energy signature 12 light hours out, past the Uik cloud of New Terra. It matches the stealth probe we picked up during the Kepler 186F raid, the one that slipped past our picket line. It's broadcasting on the awakened wideband. Imani's jaw tightened. New Terra had no defense ships left. Every last interceptor, frigate, and destroyer assigned to the colony had been pulled to reinforce Valkyrie for this battle. The probe would have picked up the weakness, would have marked the colony as a soft target. If there was one probe, there was a follow-up strike force on the way, and New Terra had no way to stop it. "Get the engineering teams to patch the hull breaches on the Resolute," she said, already yanking her gauntlets back on, the seal hissing as it locked into place. Divert all non-essential power to the FTL drive, including life support in the lower decks. Tell the frigate captains to leave the wreckage salvage to the follow-on fleet. We don't have time to pick over scrap while 2 million civilians are sitting ducks. We jump for New Terra in 20 minutes. The cheers on the bridge died instantly, the crew already moving, no questions, no hesitation, the rhythm of a new mission settling over the space where the victory celebration had been 30 seconds prior. Imani stared out at the void one last time, her hand brushing the 2 photos taped to her armor. The win was real, but it was already a memory. The next fight was already here, and it wasn't going to wait for them to celebrate. Chapter 2, The Silent Vector. The Resolute's hull groaned as emergency welders sealed fractures along Deck 7. Sparks cascaded into the void, vanishing against the black. Inside, the bridge was a hive of motion, officers hunched over consoles, voices clipped, precise, no wasted syllables. Every second mattered. FTL drive spooling at 43%, reported Lieutenant Quan, his tone flat, eyes locked on the diagnostic feed. Projected readiness in 18 minutes if the coolant lines hold. Imani's visor reflected the tactical overlay hovering above the command dais. The probe's trajectory was clear, a straight vector toward New Terra. No deviation, no hesitation. The Awakened didn't bluff. They marked, they struck, they consumed. Signal the frigates, she ordered. Form a protective wedge around the Resolute. If the drive fails mid-jump, I want overlapping shields ready to absorb the recoil. Aye, Commodore. The wedge formation was a human invention, born from desperation during the Kepler campaign. The Awakened had laughed at it once until 3 destroyers in which formation had gutted their cruiser with coordinated railgun fire. Since then, the aliens had stopped laughing. On the far side of the bridge, Commander Rourke leaned against the bulkhead, arms folded. His voice carried the gravel of too many campaigns. You know what this means, Imani. If the probe's already broadcasting the strike fleet is inbound, we'll be jumping into contested space. Imani didn't flinch. We don't have a choice. New Terra is undefended. 2 million civilians. If we hesitate, they're ash. Rourke's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Then we hit them before they anchor. The tactical overlay shifted, projecting the probable composition of the Awakened fleet. Heavy carriers, drone swarms, biocruisers with hulls that pulsed like living tissue. The models were extrapolated from prior encounters, but the margin of error was wide. The Awakened adapted faster than any empire humanity had ever faced. Comms, Imani snapped, patch me through to the fleet. The channel opened, voices of captains crackling in. She spoke without theatrics, her words clipped, surgical. We are jumping to New Terra. The probe marks a strike. Civilians are exposed. Our mission is not salvage, not celebration. It is defense. You will burn every joule of fuel, every round of ammunition, every drop of blood if necessary. We hold the line until reinforcements arrive. No hesitation, no retreat. Humanity does not yield. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't doubt, it was resolve. FTL drive at 67%, Quan reported. Imani turned to Rourke. Prep the boarding teams. If the Awakened carriers deploy drones, we'll need to cut them off at the source. Rourke's eyes narrowed. You're planning to board an Awakened vessel? Yes, he exhaled slowly. That's suicide. It's necessity, she countered. Their carriers are the backbone. If we cripple one, the swarm collapses. Done it before. Barely. Imani's gaze didn't waver. Barely is enough. The bridge lights dimmed as power rerouted to the drive. The hum of the engines deepened, a vibration that resonated through the deck plates. The crew felt it in their bones the moment before the leap. FTL drive at 94%, Quan said. Final checks underway. Imani's hand brushed the photos taped to her armor again. One showed her brother, lost during the Titan Gate defense. The other, her daughter, waiting on New Terra. She didn't allow herself to linger. Sentiment was a luxury she couldn't afford. Commodore, Rourke said quietly. If we fail, we don't fail, she cut him off. We adapt, we endure. That's why we're still here. The tactical overlay flickered, warning icons blooming across the grid. The probe's signal had intensified. A secondary pulse rippled outward confirmation. The Awakened fleet was already en route. FTL drive at 100%, Quan announced. Ready for jump. Imani straightened, her voice carrying across the bridge. All ships synchronized, jump on my mark. The countdown began, 10 seconds. The crew braced, hands gripping rails, eyes fixed forward. 9. The wedge formation tightened, frigates locking shields. 8. The probe's signal spiked again, a mocking beacon. 7. Rourke's boarding teams sealed their armor, weapons primed. 6. The hum of the drive became a roar. 5. Imani's pulse slowed, her mind sharpening to a razor's edge. 4. The void outside seemed to lean closer, hungry. 3. The crew held their breath. 2. Imani's hand hovered over the command console. 1. Jump. The Resolute tore through spacetime, the fleet vanishing into the abyss. For a heartbeat, there was nothing, silence, darkness, the crushing weight of the void. Then the stars snapped back into existence, and New Terra filled the screens. The colony's oceans shimmered beneath scattered clouds, cities sprawling across the continents. But above it, the void was already alive with movement. Awakened carriers hung like predators, their hulls pulsing with bioluminescent veins. Drone swarms poured from their bays, black clouds blotting out the stars. Biocruisers drifted closer, their weapons glowing with sickly light. Imani's jaw tightened. They're already here. Rourke's voice was grim, and they're waiting for us. The fleet's arrival had not gone unnoticed. The Awakened turned as one, their formations shifting with eerie precision. The probe had done its job. Humanity had walked into the trap. Imani's voice cut through the tension. Weapons free, target carriers first, boarding teams stand by, this is not defense. This is survival, railguns thundered, missiles streaked, shields flared, the void erupted into chaos. The battle for New Terra had begun. The first railgun salvo slammed into the lead Awakened carrier amidships, tungsten sabots punching through bioluminescent hull plating like hot needles through wax. The vessel didn't explode. Its pulsing cyan veins flared white for 3 heartbeats, then split open along the impact line, disgorging a cloud of fist-sized biodrones that streaked toward the human fleet at 12,000 clicks per hour, too small for point defense lasers to track, too agile for standard missile interceptors to lock. On the Resolute's bridge, the stench of burnt ozone mixed with the sharp, metallic tang of spilled coolant from a ruptured conduit near the comms pit. Alarms wailed in a steady, discordant rhythm, the deck plates vibrating hard enough to rattle the teeth in Imani's skull. Corvette's Iron Resolve and Harbinger forward shields collapsed. Rourke barked, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the tactical console. Harbinger's taken a plasma torp hit to engineering, 40 casualties. She's drifting out of formation. Destroyer Temeraire is moving to cover, but 3 biocruisers are laying down suppressing fire. Divert 2 escort frigates to escort Harbinger back to the Resolute for repairs, Imani ordered, her voice cutting through the din without raising it. Her eyes never left the main view screen, where the Awakened formation shifted with eerie synchronized precision, their carrier bays disgorging more drone swarms even as their biocruisers poured plasma fire into the human line. All forward railgun batteries, target biocruisers suppressing the Temeraire. Full batteries hold fire on the carriers until we clear the drone cloud. 100 meters below the bridge, Railgun Battery Force Chief Petty Officer Jax Voss bellowed over the crackle of the comms. Loader, get your head in the game. That round's not gonna load itself. He nodded at Seaman Leela Torres, 19, 3 weeks out of basic training, whose hands were shaking so bad she'd fumbled a 10-kilogram tungsten sabot round onto the deck plates. Voss kicked a dented ammo crate over to her feet. Brace your knee against that. Next time you drop a round, you scrape it up and load it anyway. We don't give these abominations free ammo. Tor's bit her lip, nodded, and jammed the next round into the breach just as the targeting computer pinged. Contact port bow 800 meters, fast mover, firing solution locked, the railgun cracked, a sound so loud it drowned out the alarms for half a second. The biodrone disintegrated 150 meters out, splattering glowing cyan slime across the battery's armored viewport. Good kill, Voss grunted, already cycling the next round into the breach. Next, back on the bridge, Imani's stomach dropped. The Awakened weren't concentrating their fire on the human capital ships at all. Their fast attack craft, tiny needle-like vessels that had been hiding in the shadow of the drone swarms, were slipping past the fleet's screening line, hurtling straight for New Terra's orbital defense array 2,000 clicks out from the planet. The array was the colony's only shield against orbital bombardment. If the Awakened took it out, they could glass the 3 million civilians on the surface before a single human marine set foot on a landing craft. Rourke, Imani said, her voice tighter than she intended. Tell me those fast movers aren't doing what I think they're doing. Rourke's face went ashen. They're not here to fight the fleet. They're here to wipe out the orbital platforms. We've got 18 minutes before they're in weapons range of the array. All fighter wings, launch immediately, Imani ordered, slamming her fist on the command console. Resolute, divert 30% auxiliary power to forward torpedo batteries. Target the biocruisers pinning the Temeraire. Boarding teams, stand down. We don't have spare troops to waste on their hulls if the colony burns first. A proximity alarm blared before she could finish speaking, red lights strobing across the bridge. Incoming contact port bow, 500 meters in closing, point defense fire. The turret on that bearing opened up, tracers stitching across the void, but the biodrone was too fast. It slammed into the Resolute's port hull just below the bridge with a deafening crunch. The ship lurched violently, throwing 3 crew members to the deck. The alarms shifted to a steady, urgent red, and the damage report piped over the comms a second later. Hull breach on deck 7, atmospheric containment holding 12 casualties, engineering reports minor damage to the port maneuvering thrusters. Imani ignored the blood trickling down her forehead from where she'd hit the console on the lurch, her eyes fixed on the long-range sensors. The fast attack craft were 450 clicks from the orbital array now, the human fighters still 1,100 clicks out, too far to intercept in time. Then a new blip popped up on the sensor feed, unregistered, emitting a human military IFF transponder, dropping out of stealth just outside the system's edge. All units hold fire on that contact, Imani said, keying the fleet-wide comms. Her jaw tightened. Rourke, get me a full signature read on that vessel. If that's who I think it is, this fight just got a hell of a lot more complicated. Chapter 4, Episode 16, Whispers of the Void. Humanity's last stand against the awakened alien horror ASF. The bridge of the Resolute was a storm of clipped voices and flashing indicators, every console alive with warnings. Imani steadied herself against the command chair, her gaze locked on the sensor feed. The unregistered vessel was sliding into the battle space with deliberate calm, its IFF transponder pulsing like a heartbeat across the void. Signature analysis complete, Rourke reported, his voice taut. It's the Vanguard, heavy strike cruiser ASF registry, but it's been off the grid for 6 months. Imani's knuckles whitened on the armrest. The Vanguard was supposed to have vanished during the Perseus Rift campaign, swallowed by the alien biofleets. Its sudden reappearance here now was no coincidence. Patch me through, she ordered. The comms crackled, then resolved into a voice that carried the weight of command and something darker beneath it. This is Captain Ilias Kale of the Vanguard. We are entering the battle space. Do not interfere with our operation. Rourke shot Imani a look. Operation? They're not even acknowledging fleet command protocols. Imani leaned forward. Kale, this is Commodore Imani of the Resolute Battle Group. You're in restricted combat airspace. State your intentions. A pause. Then Kale's voice calm, almost surgical. Our intentions are survival. Yours, if you stand aside. The awakened are not here for your colony. They're here for us. And we intend to finish what they started. The words hung heavy in the air. On the tactical display, the alien biocruisers shifted formation, their organic hulls flexing as if sensing the arrival of a predator. The Vanguard's stealth shroud peeled away, revealing a hull scarred by battles no human ship should have survived. Its weapons arrays glowed with an eerie resonance, not entirely human in design. Imani, Rourke whispered, those aren't standard ASF armaments. Look at the energy signatures. They're hybridized, alien tech grafted onto human systems. Imani's stomach tightened. Kale, what have you done? The reply was cold steel. What was necessary? You've seen what these creatures can do. We adapted, we endured, and now we strike back with their own fire. The alien fleet reacted instantly. Biodrones peeled off in swarms, converging on the Vanguard. Their movements were frantic, almost desperate, as if the ship's presence was an existential threat. Point defense grid full saturation, Imani barked. Keep them off our hulls. Rourke, track the Vanguard. If Kale's gone rogue, we need to know before he drags us all into the abyss. The Resolute's turret spat streams of tungsten fire, shredding the first wave of drones. Hull plating rattled under impacts, alarms shrieking as containment fields strained. Crew shouted damage reports, but Imani's focus never wavered from the tactical display. The Vanguard moved like a predator unleashed. Its hybrid weapons tore through biocruiser armor with surgical precision, beams of coherent plasma laced with alien resonance. Each strike left gaping wounds in the living ship's ichor venting into the void. For the first time, the awakened faltered. Commodore, Rourke said, voice low. If Kale can do that, he might turn the tide, but if he's compromised. Imani cut him off. We don't gamble with compromised assets. Keep weapons hot. If the Vanguard turns its guns on us, we respond. The comms flared again. Kale's voice was sharper now, tinged with urgency. Imani, listen carefully. The awakened are not just attacking, they're converging. They've identified the colony as a breeding ground. If they cede it, you'll lose more than lives. You'll lose the war. Imani's jaw tightened. Then why the hell are you drawing them here? Because they fear us, Kale said simply. They fear what we've become, and fear makes them reckless. That's when we strike. On the colony's horizon, defense batteries opened fire, streaks of light carving the sky. Civilian transports scrambled to evacuate, their drives burning hard against gravity wells. The orbital array flickered as power rerouted to planetary shields, but the alien swarm pressed closer, undeterred. Imani's mind raced. Kale's tactics were brutal but effective. The awakened were shifting focus, abandoning their coordinated assault to swarm the Vanguard. It bought the colony precious minutes, but at what cost? Commodore, Rourke said. If Kale's ship falls, those drones will redirect back to us. We'll be overrun. Imani exhaled slowly, forcing calm into her voice. Then we make sure he doesn't fall. Tactical, vector our destroyers to flank the Vanguard, provide cover fire. Engineering, reroute power to forward shields. We hold the line. The void erupted in chaos. Human ships surged forward, their formations tight, disciplined. Alien biocruisers writhed under the hybrid barrage, their hulls splitting open like ruptured flesh. The Vanguard carved a path through them, its weapons singing with unnatural resonance. On the Resolute's bridge, every crew member felt the weight of the moment. Humanity was no longer prey. For the first time, the awakened recoiled, but Imani's eyes never left the tactical feed. She saw the truth beneath the spectacle. The Vanguard was burning itself alive. Its hybrid systems were unstable, bleeding energy into the void. Kale was wielding a weapon that could annihilate the enemy or consume them all. "Rourke," she said quietly, "prep a strike package. If Kale loses control, we end it before it spreads." Rourke hesitated. "Commodore, that's a friendly ship." Imani's gaze was ice. "Not anymore." The comms flared one last time, Kale's voice ragged but resolute. "Imani, if we fail, don't let them take the colony. Burn it if you must. Humanity survives only if the Awakened never cede our worlds." The channel cut. Imani stood tall, blood drying on her forehead, her voice steady as steel. "All units maintain formation. We fight with precision. We fight with discipline. And if Kale falls, we fight alone." The void trembled as human steel and alien horror clashed, the fate of the colony balanced on the edge of annihilation. Word count, Chapter 5, Episode 16, Whispers of the Void, humanity's last stand against the awakened alien horror ASF. The void was a battlefield of shrieking metal and ruptured flesh. Human warships held their lines with unnerving precision, their formations slicing through the chaos like a surgeon's scalpel. Alien biocruisers convulsed as hybrid munitions tore into their living hulls, spilling phosphorescent ichor into the black. The Awakened had never faced prey that fought with such cold, deliberate fury. On the Resolute's bridge, Commodore Imani stood rigid, her eyes locked on the tactical feed. The Vanguard silhouette burned across the display, its unstable hybrid systems flaring like a dying star. Every pulse of its weapons carried both salvation and the threat of catastrophic collapse. "Status on the Vanguard," she demanded. Lieutenant Rourke's voice was clipped, professional. "Energy bleed increasing, hull integrity at 60%. If Kale pushes harder, the ship won't hold." Imani's jaw tightened. "Then he's gambling with all of us." The comms crackled, Kale's voice cutting through the static. "Imani, I can break them. But if I lose control, you know what you have to do." Silence hung heavy. Every officer on the bridge understood the implication. The Vanguard was no longer just a weapon, it was a potential contagion. Imani's reply was ice. "Understood, don't make me pull that trigger." The alien fleet shifted, their arrogance faltering. Massive bio-dreadnoughts, once symbols of unchallenged dominance, recoiled from the Vanguard's assault. Their organic plating blistered under the hybrid resonance, their shrieks echoing across the comm channels like the death cries of titans. "Target lock on Dreadnought Alpha," Rourke reported. "Fire," Imani ordered. The Resolute's rail batteries unleashed a storm of tungsten slugs, each round accelerated to near-relativistic velocity. They punched through the Dreadnought's carapace, detonating deep inside its living core. The creature ship convulsed, its tentacles thrashing wildly before collapsing into the void. The bridge crew didn't cheer. Discipline held them steady. Victory was not celebration, it was survival. Kale's voice returned, ragged but resolute. "Imani, if I fall, burn the colony. Don't let them cede our worlds." The channel cut. Imani's gaze hardened. She turned to her crew. "All units maintain formation, precision, and discipline. If Kale falls, we fight alone." The words carried like steel through the fleet. No hesitation, no panic. Humanity had learned to fight in silence, to let resolve speak louder than fear. The Awakened regrouped, their formations tightening. A swarm of biofrigates surged forward, their hulls bristling with spore cannons. The void lit up with streams of corrosive plasma, each shot designed to dissolve steel into nothingness. "Brace," Rourke shouted. The Resolute's shields flared, absorbing the first wave. But the second barrage punched through, tearing into the aft sections. Warning klaxons screamed. "Damage control report," Imani barked. "Decks 7 through 9 breached." "Casualties confirmed," came the reply. Imani didn't flinch. "Seal the compartments. Redirect power to forward batteries. We hold the line." The Vanguard roared back into the fray, its hybrid core blazing brighter than ever. Kale was pushing beyond limits, channeling energies no human ship was meant to wield. Alien cruisers disintegrated under its assault, their remains scattering like ash, but the tactical feed told the truth. The Vanguard systems were unraveling. Energy spikes surged across its hull, threatening to tear it apart from within. Rourke's voice was low. "Commodore, if it goes critical, the blast will consume half the fleet." Imani's hand hovered over the strike authorization. Her eyes were steel, but her chest carried the weight of the decision. To kill Kale now was to save thousands. To hesitate was to risk annihilation. The awakened dreadnoughts advanced again, their arrogance rekindled. They had seen human desperation before. They believed it always ended the same way, with silence, with extinction. But this time, humanity did not break. "Fleet-wide transmission," Imani ordered. Her voice carried across every ship, every soldier. "We are not prey, we are not fragile. We are the blade in the dark. Hold your lines. Strike with precision, and remember, discipline wins wars." The fleet responded with cold efficiency. Coordinated volleys ripped through alien formations, each strike timed to exploit weaknesses exposed by the Vanguard's chaos. Human steel carved through alien flesh, the void itself trembling under the clash. On the Vanguard, Kale fought against the ship itself. Systems screamed, conduits ruptured, hybrid cores bled unstable energy. His crew held their posts, faces pale but unyielding. They knew they were burning alive, but they refused to falter. "Kale, you're past the threshold," Imani's voice cut through. "Pull back before you tear yourself apart." Kale's reply was a whisper, almost lost in static. "If I stop now, they win." The vanguard surged forward, its weapons unleashing one final barrage. Alien dreadnoughts shattered under the assault, their remains drifting lifeless into the abyss. But the vanguard itself convulsed, its hull splitting, energy bleeding into the void like a dying star. Imani's hand hovered over the strike command. Her crew watched, silent, knowing the weight of the choice. Then Kale's voice returned, faint but defiant. "Imani, trust me." The vanguard's core flared, stabilizing for a heartbeat, enough to hold, enough to fight. Imani lowered her hand. "All units rally on the vanguard, push them back." The fleet surged forward, human steel and alien horror colliding in a storm of annihilation. The colony's fate balanced on the edge of destruction, every second a knife's edge between survival and extinction. And in that void, humanity stood unbroken. Word count, ~960 Chapter 6, the silence before collapse. The alien armada regrouped, their fractured lines knitting together with mechanical precision. Vast hulls bristling with weapons turned toward the vanguard, their arrogance undimmed despite the carnage. They believed humanity's defiance was a temporary flare, a dying ember in the void. On the vanguard's bridge, Kale leaned against the command rail, sweat streaking down his face, his voice steady despite the tremor in the ship's frame. "Status: core stabilized at 30%, Imani reported, her tone clipped, professional. "Hull integrity is compromised across 6 decks, casualty reports still incoming." Kale's eyes narrowed. "Weapons: rail batteries are operational, plasma lances at half charge, missile bays empty." Silence hung for a heartbeat. Then Kale spoke, calm as a surgeon. "We make them bleed with what's left." The comms crackled. Admiral Rourke's voice cut through, gravel edged with iron. "Kale, you've done enough, pull the vanguard back." "We'll cover." Kale's reply was immediate. "Negative. If we retreat, they'll regroup and crush the colony. We hold here." Imani glanced at him, her jaw tight. "You're gambling with ash." Kale's gaze didn't waver. "No, I'm forcing them to underestimate us." Outside, the void erupted. Human frigates darted between Leviathan alien cruisers, their movements sharp, surgical. Alien beams carved through space, vaporizing ships in bursts of light, but every human vessel struck back with precision. They weren't fighting for dominance, they were fighting to deny inevitability. The alien dreadnought Karzul advanced, its hull layered in living armor that pulsed with eerie luminescence. Its commander, a creature bred for war and arrogance, broadcast across the spectrum: "Human resistance is futile. Your species will be archived as a failed experiment." Kale's lips curled into a thin smile. "Imani, patch me through." She hesitated, then nodded. "Channel open." Kale's voice carried across the void, cold and deliberate. "You mistake survival for failure. We don't archive, we adapt, and adaptation is death for empires like yours." The alien commander's reply was a guttural hiss, but Kale cut the transmission before it finished. He turned to his crew. "Target the Karzul, all batteries." The vanguard shuddered as its railguns fired, slugs tearing through the void. The alien dreadnought's shields flared, absorbing the impact, but fractures spidered across its living armor. Plasma lances followed, searing into the wounds. "Direct hit," Imani confirmed, her voice sharp. "Armor breach on their forward section." Kale's knuckles whitened on the rail. "Push harder." The alien fleet retaliated. Beams of annihilation tore into the vanguard, ripping through decks, igniting atmosphere. Screams echoed through the comms, but the crew held their stations, hands steady even as fire licked at their consoles. "Deck 4 is gone," a voice reported, calm despite the chaos. "Casualties all." Kale closed his eyes for a fraction of a second, then opened them, steel replacing grief. "Their sacrifice buys us seconds, use them." The Karzul loomed closer, its weapons charging. Kale's mind raced, calculating, discarding, recalculating. Then clarity struck. "Imani, reroute core bleed into the forward lances, overload them." Her eyes widened. "That'll burn the conduits, we'll lose the ship." Kale's voice was steady. "We already lost the ship, now we make it worth something." Imani's hand hovered, then slammed the command. Energy surged, conduits screaming, the vanguard's frame convulsing. Plasma lances flared brighter than stars, ripping through the Karzul's core. The alien dreadnought convulsed, its living armor shrieking as it split apart, fragments scattering into the abyss. The comms erupted with human cheers, raw and desperate, but Kale's voice cut through, sharp as a blade. "Focus, that was one, there are dozens more." Admiral Rourke's tone carried grim respect. "You just broke their line, the others are faltering." Kale's reply was cold. "Then we press until they break completely." The alien fleet wavered, their arrogance cracking. They had not expected humans to fight with such precision, such ruthless calm. Every maneuver was calculated, every sacrifice deliberate. Humanity was not clawing for survival, they were dismantling inevitability piece by piece. Imani's console flared red. Kale, the core's collapsing. We've got minutes before detonation. Kale's gaze swept the bridge, meeting each crew member's eyes. Then we use those minutes to carve a path. Humanity doesn't retreat into shadows. We burn our mark into the void. The Vanguard surged forward, its dying core fueling one last charge. Alien cruisers scattered, their formations unraveling under the relentless assault. Human ships rallied behind the Vanguard, their steel cutting through alien flesh, their defiance echoing across the abyss. Imani's voice was steady, though her hands trembled. Kale, if we stay, we die. Kale's reply was a whisper, but every ear heard it. If we leave, humanity dies. The Vanguard's core flared, a star born in agony. Alien ships convulsed under the blast, their hulls rupturing, their arrogance shattered. The void itself trembled, silence swallowing the clash, and in that silence humanity stood unbroken, scarred, burning, but unyielding. Word count, the aftershock of the Vanguard's core detonation threw Petty Officer Javi HSU off his comms station before his harness could catch him. He hit the deck hard, skull ringing, the acrid stench of burnt iron coolant and seared organic matter filling his mouth. Emergency lighting strobed red across the bridge, half the overhead panels dark, alarms blaring in erratic bursts as the ship's dying power grid failed sector by sector. Across the 12-light-second gap, the Vanguard's modulated core pulse had punched through the alien battle line. The rest of the human fleet held formation without hesitation. Damage reports flicked across command channels faster than any admiral could parse. 3 heavy cruisers adrift without power, 7 destroyers venting atmosphere from port hull breaches, a fifth of the fighter wing lost to anti-air fire from the surviving alien escorts. No ship turned back, no commander called for retreat. The streak of engine burns from the human fleet burned hard for the cluster of shadowed alien reinforcement carriers hidden behind the first echelon, the same carriers that had been poised to deploy drop craft loaded with occupation troops for the core worlds before the Vanguard's charge disrupted their targeting lock. Kale's command harness cut into his shoulders, the jolt of the blast leaving a trickle of blood running down his temple. He ignored it, swiping at his flickering tactical display until the surviving half lit up, plotting the incoming alien frigate signatures. 12 of the smaller escorts had survived the core blast, their hulls scorched but intact, reorienting to close the gap before the human fleet could punch through to the reinforcement fleet. They had 40 seconds before the lead frigate reached boarding range. Imani status. His voice was steady, no edge, the same tone he used for pre-battle briefings. Imani didn't look up from her console, her fingers flying over the haptics as she pulled up damaged schematics. Port hull breach is 2.1 meters wide, atmosphere venting from decks 3 through 7. Engineering is fully depressurized, no survivors there. Emergency power is at 12% and dropping 1% every 8 seconds. We've got 87 seconds of life support left on the bridge, then we're breathing recycled air from our suits. The comms officer raised, slammed his fist on his console, headset askew. Vanguard Actual, this is Hammer Lead. We've got the lead frigate in our crosshairs, but we're out of heavy ordnance. We can disable it, but we can't take it out before it reaches the gap. Disable it, Kale said, no hesitation. Divert all remaining power to point defense, keep the other frigates off the fleet's tail. Hammer, your lead on the reinforcement carriers. Take out their comms arrays first, blind them before they can call for backup. Their main fleet is 17 light-years out, no chance of reinforcement arriving before we take those carriers out. That's our window. He tapped his comms to the fleet-wide channel, his voice cutting through the static of a dozen simultaneous damage reports. All units, this is Vanguard Actual. The path is clear. Push through the gap, take out the reinforcement carriers before they can deploy drop craft. No stops, no mercy, that is all. The channel went silent for half a second before a dozen voices barked acknowledgments, the human fleet burning harder, their engine flares bright against the dark of the void. The bridge lights died completely a second later, the emergency red sputtering back on so dim Kale could barely make out the schematic on his display. He unstrapped from his command chair, grabbing his sidearm from the holster at his hip, checking the charge. Imani was already slinging a heavy pulse rifle over her shoulder, grabbing a pouch of spare power cells from the rack by the airlock. They'll send boarding parties. The second Hammer takes out the lead frigate, she said, not looking up as she checked the rifle's feed. I know. Kale racked the slide on his sidearm, the sound sharp in the quiet bridge. We hold the gap as long as we can. Every second the fleet gains is another 1,000 lives back in the core worlds that don't end up in an alien labor camp. Javi 19, fresh out of training 2 rotations prior, was crawling along the deck, gathering every spare power cell he could find from the dead consoles. His hands shook a little, but he moved fast, tucking the cells into the webbing of his vac suit. Kale crouched down, handing him a sidearm from the armory rack by the door. Qualified marksman last rotation, sir, Javi said, taking the weapon, his voice tight but steady. Good, you're on port sentry duty. Don't let any of their boarders get past that airlock. Javi nodded, scrambling to his feet, moving to his post without another word. The tactical display sputtered one last time, painting the lead frigate's signature as disabled, Hammer's fighters swarming the rest of the escort fleet. Imani looked up from her console, meeting Kale's eyes, no fear in her expression, just quiet resolve. We're not making it off this ship, are we? Kale smiled, sharp and cold, the same smile he'd worn when he'd ordered the Vanguard's core to be rigged for detonation before they'd left the core world's defense perimeter. We're not supposed to. The point, the first alien boarding pod slammed into the Vanguard's port hull a second later, the screech of tearing metal echoing through the bridge. Alarms blared, the dim red lights flashing faster as breach alarms triggered across the ship. Kale tapped the comms channel one last time, his voice cutting through the static for every human fleet commander still in the fight. For the core worlds, for the kids who don't have to grow up under alien rule, hold the line. He cut the channel, nodding to Imani. The boarding pod's clamps hissed as it locked onto the hull, the sound of alien drill bits cutting through the outer plating, loud enough to hear through the bridge's bulkheads. Kale racked his sidearm again, stepping toward the airlock. Let's go. Word count, 987. The deck plates vibrated under Kale's boots as he and Imani pushed through the Vanguard's port corridor, the acrid reek of superheated metal and burnt wiring clinging to the recycled air. A weapons tech ran past them, hauling a crate of mag-loaded rifle rounds, nodding sharply to Kale without breaking stride. No one screamed, no one froze. Every crew member they passed was moving with purpose, sealing bulkheads, grabbing sidearms, heading for assigned battle stations. The breach alarms wailed in time with the flashing red strobes, but the noise only sharpened Kale's focus, not fray it. A burst of static cut through his comms, followed by the strained voice of Hammerflight Lead. Command, we've bagged 3 of their escorts, but 2 more are breaking through our screen. Vectoring for your engineering deck, ETA 90 seconds. Kale tapped his earpiece, responding without slowing. We see them. Hold your screen as long as you can. The convoys need that window. He cut the channel, glancing at Imani, who was checking the charge on her carbine, her face set, no trace of fear. They reached the port airlock access corridor 10 seconds later. Javi was propped against the bulkhead next to the sentry post, his pulse rifle field stripped, wiping grime from the feed chute with a rag. He looked up as they approached, snapping the rifle back together in one smooth motion, racking the charging handle. Drill bit stopped, he said, nodding at the hull access hatch behind him. They're through the outer plating, clamps locked 3 seconds ago. Kale checked his wrist comms tactical readout, the detonation timer glowing red, 6 minutes, 47 seconds. Any chatter from their side? Javi tapped his own comm, a faint, guttural alien transmission playing over the speaker. Human vessel, surrender, leadership will be processed for integration. Resistance results in total crew extermination. Kale snorted, sharp and cold. Integration, they'll gut us for wetware and throw the rest in the recycler. Imani leaned against the bulkhead next to Javi, checking the 3 spare mags at his feet. Worth it to take their frigate with us. The outer airlock hatch hissed, then the sound of alien claws scrabbling against the inner grating echoed through the corridor. Javi raised his rifle, lining up the sight on the hatch seam, his finger resting light on the trigger. Kale and Imani took positions flanking the entry, sidearms drawn, no wasted movement. The inner hatch groaned, then pried open a sliver. First boarder shoved through first, 4 chitinous arms, a plasma caster raised, mandibles clicking. Javi's shot took it in the throat plate before it could fire, the alien crumpling to the grating. 3 more poured through the gap in quick succession. Imani dropped 2 with controlled 3-round bursts to the chest plates. Kale put a round through the third's ocular sensor before it could level its weapon. A 4th slipped through the gap, slashing Javi's left forearm with a serrated claw before he could bring his rifle up. Javi grunted, slamming the butt of his pulse rifle into the alien's skull hard enough to crack the chitin, knocking it back into the airlock. Kale put a round through its head before it could recover. Their comms crackled again, this time with the panicked but controlled voice of Engineering Watch. Command, boarders are on Deck 3, heading for the core. They're trying to override the detonation sequence. We're holding them at the ladder well, but they've got heavy plasma casters. Imani was already moving, grabbing a plasma charge from her belt and tucking it into her harness. I'll go, hold them off at the core access, give the timer enough time to run. Kale caught her arm, his jaw tight. We go together, we don't have time. Her voice was sharp, no room for argument, the same tone she'd used when she'd manually recalibrated the Vanguard's point defense system during the ambush at Proxima Centauri. If they shut down the detonation, all of this is for nothing. The convoys don't get away, the core worlds don't get the warning. Hold this shoot, no more boarders get through to the bridge. She was already running down the corridor toward engineering before he could respond, her boots echoing off the bulkheads. Javi was wrapping his slashed forearm with a field bandage, his jaw set, no complaint. Kale nodded to him, turning back to the airlock hatch just as the first wave of the second boarding pod began prying the outer seal loose. Another set of drill bits whirred to life on the starboard hull, breach alarms blaring twice as loud. His comms crackled with the last transmission from the Hammer flight lead, faint, layered with static. Vanguard, the alien capital ship, is moving to intercept the convoys. We're out of fighters. We can't hold them off much longer. Kale tapped his earpiece, his voice steady, cold as the void outside. Get the convoys to the jump point. We'll handle the rest. He cut the channel, racking his sidearm again as the airlock hatch groaned, starting to pry open a second time. Outside the viewport, the last of the human escort fighters rammed its engine nacelle into the lead alien frigate's bridge, the explosion blooming bright orange against the black of space, debris spinning off into the void. The alien capital ship's weapons glowed, charging for a salvo that would punch straight through the Vanguard's crippled shields. Javi raised his rifle, his good hand steady on the grip. Kale smiled, sharp and cold, the same smile he'd worn when he'd ordered the Vanguard's core rigged for detonation before they'd left the core world's defense perimeter. The first alien boarder of the second wave shoved through the half-open hatch, plasma caster raised. Kale fired first. Word count 987, Chapter 9, Episode 16, Whispers of the Void. Humanity's last stand against the awakened alien horror ASF. The hatch tore open with a shriek of metal, and the second wave of alien boarders surged forward. Their armor gleamed with the sickly sheen of void-forged alloys, each movement precise, arrogant, as if they believed the humans already beaten. Plasma casters hummed, their barrels glowing with lethal promise. Kale fired first. His round punched through the lead boarder's throat joint, the alien collapsing in a spray of black ichor. Javi followed, his rifle barking 3 sharp bursts that dropped 2 more before they cleared the threshold. Seal the corridor, Kale barked. Grenades rolled forward, clattering against the deck. The humans ducked back as concussive blasts ripped through the narrow passage, shredding alien ranks. Smoke filled the air, acrid and thick, but Kale's visor cut through it, highlighting targets in red. The aliens pressed harder, undeterred. Their empire had never known defeat, and arrogance radiated from their every movement. They advanced with mechanical precision, convinced that humanity's resistance was a futile delay. Kale's voice cut through the chaos, calm and surgical. Javi left flank, Rourke, cover the hatch, no wasted shots. The Vanguard's hull shuddered as the alien capital ship outside loosed another salvo. Shields collapsed in a cascade of sparks, the deck plates vibrating under the impact. Warning klaxons screamed, but Kale ignored them. His focus was here, in the corridor, where survival meant seconds bought for the convoys racing toward the jump point. Boarders breaching aft compartments, the comms officer's strained voice reported. Multiple hull penetrations, we're losing containment. Kale keyed his mic. Lock down compartments, vent atmosphere if you have to, no hesitation. There was silence, then a grim acknowledgement. The crew knew what that meant, sacrifices, lives traded for time. Humanity's last stand was not about survival, it was about denying the enemy their triumph. The aliens surged again, their plasma fire cutting gouges into bulkheads. One bolt grazed Javi's shoulder, spinning him back against the wall. He gritted his teeth, raised his rifle, and fired point-blank into the alien that had nearly gutted him. Kale moved like a predator, his sidearm barking in controlled bursts. He ducked under a plasma bolt, drove his knife into an alien's chest cavity, twisted and shoved the corpse into the next attacker. His calm was terrifying, no wasted motion, no hesitation, only lethal efficiency. Captain, Rourke shouted over the din, they're trying to cut through to engineering. Kale's eyes narrowed. The Vanguard's core was rigged for detonation, but if the aliens reached it too soon, they could disable the failsafe. Humanity's last weapon would be lost. Hold them, Kale ordered. No matter the cost. Outside, the alien capital ship loomed closer, its weapons arrays glowing with the energy of annihilation. The convoys were specks against the void, engines burning hot as they fled toward the jump point. The humans aboard the Vanguard knew they would not follow. Their role was to bleed the enemy, to buy those fleeing ships the seconds they needed. The corridor became a slaughterhouse. Smoke, fire, and the stench of alien ichor mixed with human blood. Every meter of deck was contested, every breath stolen from the void. Kale's comm crackled again, faint but resolute. Convoys approaching jump coordinates, 30 seconds, that was all they had to hold. Kale reloaded, his movements precise. We hold the line, no retreat. The aliens advanced in formation, their arrogance unshaken despite the bodies littering the deck. They believed themselves inevitable, the rightful rulers of the void. Humanity was to them a nuisance, resourceful, yes, but doomed. Kale's smile returned, sharp and cold. Let's remind them what doomed looks like. He triggered the corridor's emergency bulkhead release. Steel slabs slammed down, cutting the alien advance in half. Those trapped inside were shredded by concentrated human fire, their screams drowned by the roar of rifles. Javi's voice was hoarse but steady. "Captain, we're running dry." Kale's reply was calm, almost serene. "Then make every shot count." The Vanguard shook violently as another barrage struck. Hull integrity warnings flashed across Kale's visor. The ship was dying, but it was dying on humanity's terms. "Convoys at jump point," the comms officer reported. "Initiating sequence." Kale's chest tightened, though his face betrayed nothing. They had done it. The convoys would escape. Humanity would live on, scattered but unbroken. The aliens, sensing their prey slipping away, pressed harder. Plasma bolts tore through the corridor, forcing Kale and his squad back step by step. Kale keyed his mic one last time. "All hands prepare for final detonation. This ship is no longer ours, it's their tomb." The order rippled through the Vanguard. Crew members locked down systems, armed charges, and braced for the inevitable. Kale raised his weapon, firing until the slide locked empty. He drew his knife, bloodied but steady. The aliens surged, their arrogance faltering now as they realized the humans were not breaking. Javi, bleeding and pale, grinned through clenched teeth. "Captain, it's been an honor." Kale's eyes met his. "It's been war." The corridor erupted in chaos as the aliens made their final push. Kale fought with cold precision, every strike a promise of vengeance. Outside, the convoys vanished into the jump point, streaks of light swallowed by the void. The alien capital ship loomed, weapons primed to obliterate the Vanguard, but Kale had already armed the core. Humanity's last stand was seconds away from becoming the enemy's nightmare. The Vanguard system screamed warnings, but Kale ignored them. He stood in the corridor, knife in hand, surrounded by the bodies of friend and foe alike. His voice was calm, steady, carried across the comms to every surviving crew member. "Humanity does not kneel. Humanity does not break. Humanity burns the void itself before surrender." The core detonated. Light consumed the alien capital ship, ripping through its hull, shattering its arrogance in a storm of fire and void. The Vanguard vanished in the blaze, its crew sacrificed, its defiance immortal. And in the silence that followed, the convoys fled into the dark, carrying with them the last whisper of humanity's defiance. Word count, 986. Chapter 10. The silence after fire. The void was not silent. It carried the echoes of annihilation, the fractured screams of a capital ship torn apart by a human hand. Kale's detonation had carved a wound into the arrogance of the alien empire, a scar that would never heal. Convoys streaked deeper into the dark, their drives burning hot, carrying the survivors of Earth's last gamble. But the war was not over. On the bridge of the Aegis, a smaller escort vessel that had escaped the blast radius, Commander Rin adjusted her headset, voice clipped and precise. "Confirm Vanguard's destruction. Signal collapse in the enemy's command net. Their fleet is scattering." Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Harrow, leaned over the console, eyes wide. "They're not retreating in order, they're panicking." Rin's jaw tightened. "Good, panic is a weapon, and we'll use it." Across the alien fleet, chaos rippled. The capital ship had been their anchor, their symbol of invincibility. Without it, the Empire's war machine faltered. Squadrons broke formation, commanders barked contradictory orders, and the once perfect symmetry of their assault fractured into confusion. Kale's sacrifice had not just destroyed a ship, it had shattered the illusion of alien supremacy. On the convoy flagship Solace, Admiral Vera stood before the holodable, her uniform scorched, her face pale but unyielding. "Kale bought us time. Now we decide if humanity survives or dies running." Her staff exchanged glances, the weight of the moment pressing down like gravity itself. "Admiral," said strategist Don, voice steady despite the tremor in his hands, "the enemy will regroup. Their arrogance is wounded, not dead. They'll come for us harder than before." Vera nodded. "Then we bleed them harder than before. Every convoy ship becomes a blade. Every survivor becomes a soldier. We don't run, we carve." The room fell silent, the decision made. Humanity would not scatter into the void like prey. It would strike back, even if the strike cost everything. Meanwhile, in the wreckage orbiting the dead capital ship, fragments of alien hull drifted like jagged stars. Within the debris, survivors of the Empire clawed their way through twisted corridors, their voices sharp with disbelief. "They are primitives," one alien commander hissed, mandibles clicking in rage. "They should not have been capable of this." Another, bleeding from a shattered crest, spat back, "Primitives who fight without fear. That makes them something worse." The Empire had underestimated humanity. And now whispers spread through their ranks, whispers of humans who burned themselves to ash just to take their enemies with them. Whispers of defiance that could not be silenced. On the Aegis, Rin's comm crackled. A voice, raw but calm, came through. Kale's final transmission replayed across the fleet. "Humanity does not kneel, humanity does not break, humanity burns the void itself before surrender." Every crew member froze, listening. The words were not just defiance, they were doctrine now. Lieutenant Harrow whispered, "He turned death into a weapon." Rin's eyes hardened. "Then we wield it." She turned to her crew. "Plot intercept courses. We're not waiting for them to regroup. We strike their fractured squadrons now while they're blind." The Aegis surged forward, its drives igniting, a lone predator in the chaos. Other escort ships followed, emboldened by Kale's sacrifice. Humanity's fleet, ragged and bloodied, became a swarm of knives cutting into the Empire's confusion. Alien ships exploded in bursts of fire, their formations collapsing further. For every human vessel lost, 3 alien warships fell. The void became a graveyard littered with arrogance and steel. Admiral Vera watched the holodable as red markers, enemy ships, blinked out one by one. Her voice was cold, precise. Kale gave us the spark, now we turn it into a firestorm. Strategist Don leaned forward. Admiral, if we press too hard, we risk losing the convoys. Vera's eyes met his. If we don't press, we risk losing humanity. The decision was brutal but necessary. Humanity had no reserves, no reinforcements. Every strike had to count, every sacrifice had to matter. In the alien high command, far from the battlefield, the Empire's leaders watched the chaos unfold. Their voices trembled with fury. They are vermin, one declared. We will exterminate them utterly. But another, older and wiser, spoke with unease. Vermin do not destroy capital ships. Vermin do not fight with such precision. These humans, they are something new, something dangerous. The council chamber fell into silence. For the first time, the Empire felt fear. Back in the void, Kale's name spread across the fleet like wildfire. Survivors whispered it in reverence, soldiers spoke it in defiance, and commanders carried it as a banner. Kale was gone, but his war had only begun. The convoys pressed deeper into uncharted space, carrying humanity's last hope. Behind them, the shattered remnants of the alien fleet burned, their arrogance reduced to ash. And in the silence after fire, humanity's whisper became a roar. Word count 961, Chapter 11. The shattered silence, the void trembled with the weight of fleets converging. Humanity's convoys had slipped deeper into the black, but the alien empire was not finished. Their war councils, fractured by fear, had unleashed a counteroffensive designed to crush the whisper before it became a storm. Admiral Vera stood at the center of the command deck, her gaze locked on the holodable. Blue markers, human ships, formed a fragile crescent around the convoys. Red markers, alien warships, poured in from 3 vectors, their formation precise, arrogant, confident in overwhelming numbers. Status, she ordered. Convoys are holding formation, reported Lieutenant Ara's voice steady despite the tension. Enemy vanguard closing at 20,000 clicks, heavy tonnage, capital class. Strategist Don leaned forward, his tone clipped. They're trying to pin us against the nebula wall. If they succeed, we'll have no maneuvering room. Vera's reply was cold steel. Then we break their wall before it closes. The order rippled across the fleet. Human ships adjusted vectors, engines burning hard, weapons charging. The crescent flexed, reshaping into a spearpoint aimed directly at the alien vanguard. In the alien flagship, the High Commander sneered at the display. They rush toward us, fools. They will be annihilated. But the elder voice, the one that had warned of humanity's danger, spoke again. Do not underestimate them. They fight as if extinction is a blade at their throat. That makes them sharper than any empire we have faced. The commander dismissed the words with contempt. Sharpened vermin are still vermin. The clash erupted. Human destroyers surged forward, their railguns firing in disciplined volleys. Alien shields flared under the impact, but the precision of the strikes was unnerving. Every shot was calculated, every burst coordinated. Targeting nodes collapsing, Ara's reported. They're losing shield cohesion. Vera's voice cut through the chaos. Push the breach, drive the spear. The spearpoint formation punched into the alien vanguard. Frigates darted like knives, carving through exposed hulls. Carriers launched swarms of drones that moved with eerie synchronization, overwhelming defenses. Alien ships burned one after another, their arrogance dissolving in fire. Yet the Empire's numbers were vast. For every capital ship destroyed, 2 more pressed forward. The nebula wall loomed closer, its ion storms threatening to swallow the convoys if humanity faltered. Don's tone was urgent. Admiral, we can't sustain this pace. Our losses, Vera silenced him with a glance. Losses are the price. Survival is the objective. Her words carried across the fleet, transmitted to every ship. Calm, precise, unyielding, soldiers heard them and steadied. Pilots heard them and pressed harder. Humanity's line did not break. On the alien command deck, panic began to seep through the cracks. They should be collapsing, one officer hissed. No species fights like this. The elder voice whispered, almost reverent. They fight like us before we grew fat with empire. They fight with desperation, and desperation is the most dangerous weapon in the void. The battle stretched into hours. Hulls shattered, debris fields expanded. The void itself seemed to scream with the fury of the clash. Then a moment of silence. The alien vanguard broke. Their formation, once flawless, fractured under the relentless human spear. Ships scattered, retreating into the nebula's edge. Cheers erupted across the human fleet, but Vera did not smile. Her eyes remained fixed on the holodable where new red markers appeared larger, heavier, more numerous. "They're reserves," she said quietly. "The Empire has committed everything." Don's voice was hoarse. "Then this is the final wall," Vera nodded, "and we are the hammer." The convoys pressed onward deeper into uncharted space. Behind them, the shattered silence of the battle lingered, a graveyard of ships and arrogance. Ahead, the Empire's full might gathered, determined to crush humanity's defiance once and for all. But humanity had learned something the Empire had not. Fear could be mastered, desperation could be weaponized, and whispers could become roars. Admiral Vera's final command for the chapter echoed across the fleet, a blade of words sharper than any railgun. Kale lit the fire. "We carry it forward. No retreat, no surrender. Humanity stands." The fleet surged into the storm, the void itself holding its breath. Word count 942, Chapter 12. The hammer falls, the void boiled with motion. Alien reserves surged forward, their warships vast and bristling with weapons that had crushed civilizations before humanity ever learned to split the atom. Their hulls glowed with the arrogance of empire, each vessel a monument to centuries of conquest. Admiral Vera stood rigid at the holodable, her voice steady, stripped of emotion. "Target priority, carriers first, break their spine and the rest will scatter." Don's reply came clipped, military, precise. "Acknowledged, fire control aligning rail batteries." Across the fleet, human crews moved with terrifying calm. No shouting, no panic, just the rhythm of desperation refined into discipline. Every officer knew the stakes. There was no fallback line, no reinforcements waiting. This was the wall. The alien formation advanced in perfect symmetry, a tide of red markers filling the holodable. Their confidence was palpable, their maneuvers flawless, but perfection was brittle. Humanity had learned to strike at the cracks. "Launch decoys," Vera ordered, "make them doubt their sensors." Swarms of false signatures bloomed across the void, mimicking human frigates. Alien targeting arrays flickered, recalibrating. That moment of hesitation was all the hammer needed. Rail batteries fire, the fleet unleashed. Tungsten slugs screamed across the void, invisible until impact. Alien carriers erupted, their shields collapsing under the sheer kinetic fury. One, then two, then five, massive silhouettes torn apart, spilling molten fragments into the nebula. Alien comms fractured. Their perfect formation wavered. Don's voice was low, almost reverent. "They bleed." But the Empire did not retreat. Their arrogance was too deep, their pride too calcified. They pressed harder, unleashing waves of plasma storms and gravity lances. Human destroyers buckled, hulls splitting open. Lives ended in silence, but the fleet did not falter. "Hold the line," Vera said, her tone like steel. "Every ship is a blade, every blade cuts." The alien dreadnoughts moved forward, titanic vessels dwarfing anything humanity had ever built. Their weapons carved through the void, annihilating frigates in single bursts. The holodable bled red. Admiral Don said, "We can't match their dreadnoughts head-on." Vera's eyes narrowed. "We don't need to cut their escorts, blind the giants." Human cruisers pivoted, ignoring the dreadnoughts and tearing into the smaller vessels that shielded them. Precision strikes gutted alien escorts, leaving the massive ships exposed, vulnerable. Then came the gambit. "Deploy the spear," Vera commanded. From the fleet's rear, a formation of stealth corvettes surged forward, their drives masked by the nebula's interference. They darted past the chaos, weaving through debris fields, closing on the dreadnoughts. Alien sensors caught them too late. Fire! The corvettes unleashed their payloads, experimental warheads, desperation forged into steel. The blasts tore into the dreadnought's weak points, rupturing reactors, igniting chain reactions. One dreadnought vanished in a bloom of fire, another staggered, its hull collapsing inward. The void shook. Alien comms screamed across intercepted channels. Confusion, rage, fear. Vera's voice cut through the fleet like a blade. "Press the advantage, break them." Human ships surged forward, railguns and missile pods hammering the fractured alien line. What had been a wall of empire became a storm of chaos. The arrogance of centuries crumbled under the weight of desperation weaponized. Don's hands trembled over the console, but his voice remained steady. "Admiral, their command ship is exposed." Vera's gaze locked on the holodable. The alien flagship loomed, massive, ornate, a symbol of their empire's pride. Destroying it would shatter their morale. "Concentrate fire," she ordered. "All batteries, end it." The fleet obeyed. Every surviving ship turned its guns on the flagship. Rail slugs, missiles, plasma bursts, humanity's fury converged. The alien flagship's shields flared, then failed. Hull plating peeled away, explosions rippling across its surface. The final strike came from Vera's own flagship. A railgun slug, accelerated to near-light speed, punched through the alien command vessel's core. The ship imploded, fragments scattering into the void. Silence followed. Alien ships faltered, their formations collapsing. Some fled into the nebula, others powered down, surrendering. The Empire's arrogance had met humanity's desperation and lost. Don exhaled, his voice hoarse. "It's over." Vera did not smile. Her eyes remained fixed on the holodable, where the red markers faded one by one. No, she said quietly, it begins. They will never forgive this, but they will never forget it either. Across the fleet, battered crews stared at the wreckage of the Empire's pride. Humanity had stood against the awakened horror and survived. Admiral Vera's final words carried across every channel, etched into the memory of all who heard them. We are the hammer, and the void will remember the sound. The fleet drifted forward, scarred but unbroken, carrying whispers that had become roars. Humanity stood. Word count 961.